There we Okay, so it's lovely to see everyone or hear everyone. So we start on our mats. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Sometimes it takes some time for the audio to adjust. So we are going to start our practice on our backs tonight. So if you want to come down onto your backs in a constructive rest pose. Now, if you've got some padding that you want to bring to behind your head, that can be really nice to start in that way, just to begin to lengthen the back of the neck muscles. And I'll talk us through as we get settled. So it takes some time just to arrive onto your mat. And when we're in our constructive rest pose, the knees are bent, and the feet are about hip width apart, wherever they need to be to feel stable. So it doesn't feel like you're holding the legs up at all. In order for the iliopsoas to release the hip flexors, you're coming into a fairly restorative place, and then you bring the arms down.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. There's that feedback again. I don't know if it's because Julia's not muted. It's often her, she can't mute or something, can't she? Yeah, fantastic.
Sometimes it unmutes as well, Julia, which is really weird. But yeah, flag it up if it happens again, and I can do that my side. So we're coming into constructive rest pose, and you can allow for your palms to roll over and face up towards the ceiling. Just coming into a space where you can begin to draw your attention inwards. So whatever has happened throughout the day, you can allow for those thoughts to kind of be held aside, and we begin to attend to the body and to the breath. So these next sessions, the next 12 sessions, taking us up to Christmas, we're going to be working through the 8 limbs of yoga. So as I'm talking, just begin to attend to the body and the breath. And the 8 limbs of yoga, one of those limbs, we have asana, which we're familiar with, the postures, the movement work. One of the limbs is pranayama, the breath work, and we are familiar with that, the breathing exercises. Before we have those 2 elements, we have the yamas. And if you came to classes before, we went through the yamas and niyamas one by one. So we have the outer observances, the yamas, and the inner observances, the niyamas. And as we move through these limbs, and there isn't a hierarchy, this is really like a wheel. So all of these prongs of the wheel are as important as one another. As we move beyond asana and pranayama, we move to something called pratyahara, which is sense withdrawal, which is part of this internalization process. We move our way from the outside into the inside. So we move the senses, which are often looking to the future, the past, and drawing them in towards the present, the moment by moment, the changes and the flux. So we have pratyahara, which we'll get onto later down through the series. We have dharana, dhyana, which one of them is concentration. The other one is meditation, a sort of absorption in the process of meditation, which comes through the yoga. And then you have samadhi, which is bliss, which is integration, which is almost the ultimate, but it's not to be strived for. So we're going to be working with those 8 limbs, and we've touched upon them in sessions anyway. Hopefully you'll have a clearer experiential understanding of what yoga is in its fullest sense. So coming into our constructive rest pose. Now, if you would like to bring the hands into the body, that can be really helpful to get that sense of feedback. Now, some of you might have not done much yoga over the summer. Some of you might be practicing. Just give yourself the opportunity, if you haven't already done so today, to begin to notice the movement under the hands, whether that movement is in the chest or the belly. See if you can feel into a sense of expansion on the inhalation and a sense of compression moving downwards towards the ground with gravity on the exhalation. And we're going to begin to breathe through the nostrils. So as long as your nostrils aren't blocked, see if you can inhale through the nostrils and exhale through the nostrils. Some of us find it very difficult to breathe through the nasal cavity if you're not familiar with this. So see if that's something that feels familiar or unfamiliar. We're going to try and breathe in this fashion with a sense of ujjayi breath. So you have this sense of inhaling, and you can hear the rush of the air come through the nostrils. There's a slight tightening around the back of the glottis, the throat. And as you exhale, you can hear that rushing through again. So it's internalization of the breath, which really enhances our focus. Now, can you feel the movement in the chest, or can you feel the movement in the belly? Perhaps you can feel movement in both of those areas, or perhaps you can feel movement in the back of the body. Or maybe there's no movement at all. And just pay attention to that without judgment. So it may be the case the breath is very smooth, or maybe there's a sense of crackliness. I hope for you there is no crackliness. It's always a concern. So we're really paying attention to our respiratory system here. Really important element of our being. Becoming more aware of the breath. And if you didn't feel like there was a sense of movement in the belly region, I want you to see if you can soften around the belly and really puff the belly out as you inhale. You're almost sticking the belly out as you inhale here. And as you exhale, allow for the belly to draw down and away. Inhale, belly puffs up. That means the diaphragm can draw down and all of the air can come into that cavity. And as you exhale, belly draws inwards, air rushes out, the cavity reduces. And as you're doing that, see if you can allow for the ribcage to open and expand on the inhalation. And ribcage draws in on the exhalation. Inhaling, lovely expanding ribs. Exhale, the ribs draw in together. Lovely. And then once you breathe here, just draw that attention back into the back of the shoulder blades. Can you see if you can perceive movement there? So you're intending the movement to move in this area of the body. And maybe as you exhale, that sinking in drops down into the shoulder blades. And don't strive for this too much. One of the 3 yamas we're going through tonight, we have Ahimsa, non-harm, Satya, truth, so being honest with yourself, what's happening, and Asteya, which is non-stealing. So on the surface, non-stealing can be quite literal about not taking other people's things, but it also can mean not stealing an idea for yourself. So that's really about the touching in and the awareness that we're trying to gain here. Lovely. And just noticing how the neck is here. If you've got padding behind your head, you might want to move this. One of the best signifiers of our well-being and our stress levels and our holding patterns would be the tension that we hold around the neck. Okay, so if we have quite a stiff neck, it tends to mean that there's quite a lot of anxiety. There tends to mean there's quite a lot of holding. And if we can move our nervous system into a state of rest and relaxation, the head will move freely. And we're going to work with some eye exercises to help that. So first of all, I want you to just draw your gaze over to the left shoulder, rotating the neck. Draw your gaze over to the right shoulder, rotating your neck to the other side. And drawing the chin over to the left. Is there one side that will move more freely? Is there one side that is slightly tighter? Now, more often than not, there is going to be a side that feels different. For me, as I notice this, it's the left is very free, whereas the right is not quite as free. So we'll be coming back to this head turning quite a lot throughout the practice, as it really helps us understand and touch into that truth, that Satya, of how the body is. Super. And then just bring your gaze back up to the ceiling. And if you want to draw your elbows in towards the ground, we're going to lift and draw shoulder blades together. Okay, so we're lifting breastbone up towards the ceiling, drawing shoulder blades down together to one another. Lovely. And bring the hands back down. Now we're going to come into a pelvic roll. So if you want to, you can bring your fingers to the hip points just to get more contact with what the pelvis is doing. Make sure the feet are grounded. So you might want to lift the toes off the ground, lift the heels off the ground. I'm going to, with an exhalation, just roll along the sacrum, the tailbone, to lift the front of the pelvis up. And with an exhalation, we're going to roll and create a lumbar curve. So there's an arch, allowing for this lordosis to come about in the lumbar. Pelvic tilt here. Exhale, allow for the pelvis to roll along the back of the pelvis. And I'm just going to come and see, for those of you I can see, whether you can make sense, because the pelvic roll, if you're not familiar with it, is quite tricky. So the back of the pelvis is rolling backwards and forwards. So if you're not used to this, super, I can see a lot. Yes, that's the arch of the lumbar, and then you're flattening the lumbar. Perfect, you, and that's really good. I can see that you've got that. If you do that with the breath, in time with the breath, then the diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm will be working with one another rather than against one another. It's not a bad thing to work against one another, but it's just good to get touch into that efficiency that we already have. Lovely. Exhaling, flattening the lumbar, and inhaling, rocking into the lumbar lordosis. Now, if you've experienced any pain with the pelvic tilt, just take note of that, because it means, well, a lot of us have very busy lumbars and we hold tension in the lumbar, and it's something that you want to take note of for your practice. So coming back to a neutral place, if you've got your fingers to your hip points, you can bring them down. I first of all want you to just lengthen the left leg straight out away from you. Let go of that leg as much as you can. Relax the leg away. Now, can you first of all relax that leg away? Easier said than done. Sometimes when we lie down, we're really holding, like we should be doing something. And obviously here, we're really not doing much. We're simply trying to be as restful and easeful as possible. So just bring that finger to the front of the iliopsoas. And if you can feel into that area, you'll notice that there's like a sort of gristly, tendony, ligamenty in there. That's your hip flexor. That's part of your iliopsoas. That connects your lower legs, for transportation with the upper body. And it connects to the lumbar, it connects up to the rib cage, it connects to the diaphragm, and it affects things like heart rate. So it has this it's very integral to our being. So notice how that left leg is. Bend the left leg and do the same with the right leg, just allowing for that to flop out, as it were, to the side. Allow for the foot to really roll out to the side there. Can you allow for everything to rest? Now, how does it feel in your lumbar? So if there's any pulling, and it may be the case, if we swap over to the other side, that one side feels more comfortable than the other, maybe they feel completely equal. Maybe there's a preference. Again, I seem to have a preference for my left and feels a bit tighter with my right, but I have slight scoliosis, so that's going to be why there is a difference there. Most of us do have a slight sense of scoliosis. Swap to the other side. But it's going to vary from person to person. And then if you've got the legs long on the other side, let's explore how it is to be in your Shavasana. So we're straightening the legs out away from us. The feet ideally are rolling to the side. The arms are coming out to the side of the body, if that feels okay for you. If that feels too open, you can bring the hands into the abdomen area just to touch into the breath. Coming into your Shavasana, allow for the gaze to look up towards the ceiling and look over to the left and look over to the right. Notice if there's any difference here. Noticing if there's any sense of relaxation that has taken place. Maybe there's more rotation here, maybe not. And indeed, if you're feeling any pulling here, and if you are someone who has this and is not very aware of it, maybe you don't notice it. Maybe there's a sense of numbing around this area of the body. But if you can feel that it's not quite the most comfortable position, bend the knees. If you can't perceive anything, bend the knees and see what a difference it makes, but relax the pelvis so it comes into neutral. Relax that heavy joint, as it were. The pelvic bowl is the heaviest bone in the body. Relax that and allow for the back of the pelvis to just drop. So you've got the heel of the pelvis here, the sacrum. Allow that just to settle on down there. Super. And come back to the breath. How is your breathing? Perhaps you feel quite happy here. Sometimes it just takes some time, and if we move out in and out of these positions too much, you don't get the chance to release. So I'd like you to think about your hand position now. So as we inhale, we're going to move the palm of the hand up towards the ceiling. As we exhale, we're going to move that palm down towards the mat. Now I want you to experience how it feels to inhale all the way up the arm, what movement takes place, rolling as you bring the hands down, so the palms are coming down towards the floor. So that movement, as we roll, you might find that the hands are moving up to where the shoulders are. As there's this rolling action, you can make this action as intentional or as subtle as you want. But I find it's really nice to allow for the arms to really roll, and you might find that they move. So inhaling, palms up towards the ceiling, through the nostrils, exhale, palms coming down towards the mat. Inhale, a very slow snow angel taking place here. Exhale, really breathe as deep as possible here. Inhale. Hands may or may not be coming up towards the ceiling. This is when you want to make sure there's enough space around you. Exhale, hands, palms come down. Inhale, allowing for this movement to move up into the shoulder girdle. Exhale, palms facing down. Inhale, palms face up. Exhale, palms facing down. Now you're going to get to a point where the arms don't really want to move anymore. And it may be the case that your arms are happy to come to above your head. It's going to depend on your shoulder mobility. Please don't force anything. We're just noticing. Lovely. And with your exhalation now, we're going to keep the palms upwards, and we're going to draw the hands down to the hips. Exhale, hands come down to the hips. Inhale, arms coming all the way up overhead. Exhale. See if you can stroke the floor that you're on with the fingertips here. Inhale. Arms come all the way up. Exhale. One more time, lengthening the inhalation. And your arm-based snow angel. Exhale, bring the arms down. Now we're going to lengthen the legs if it was comfortable for you, and do a whole body version of this. So we're going to inhale, spread the legs out and the arms out, but exhale and draw ourselves into a tiny little single organism. Bring ourselves into a ball. Inhale, cautious around the lumbar here, quite a lot of strength around the abdominals. Exhale, bring the gaze up towards the knees. Protect your lumbar. Inhale, coming into your starfish. Exhale, knees to nose, or nose to knees, or thereabout. Inhale. Exhale. If you want this to be a little bit stronger, don't bring the limbs down to the mats. Open yourself up into a starfish with the limbs off the ground. Exhale. Remembering to breathe. Inhale. And exhale, draw the knees to the nose and really hold yourself into a tiny ball, emptying out all of the breath onto the exhalation. Super. And we're going to bring the left hand to the right knee and allow for the knees to roll over to the side. Bringing the right arm out to the side in a T shape. So we're coming into a twist. Rest the head back onto the mat and allow for the knees to drop down. Now, because we're following the sense of Ahimsa, no harm, don't feel like you have to hold the knees too tightly together. You can allow the knees to splay out to the side, releasing the hands into a T shape. Coming into an abdominal rotation here, fairly gently, bring the gaze to the opposing hand. So can you gaze over to the right hand here? How does that feel? Coming into your Jatara Parivriti, your abdominal twist. So see if you can really get the gaze to come over to the other side. Lovely. Breathing here, inhaling, expanding into the rib cage. Exhaling, I'm just going to have a look. Exhale, allow that rib cage to draw inwards. Inhale, rib cage expands. So you really allow for the breath to come in. Keep the shoulder blades touching down onto the mat. Exhale, and allow for that rib cage to draw inwards. Super. If you're gazing over to the right hand, draw the gaze up towards the ceiling. And we're going to bring that hand and touch the knees back into your neutral. So you're on your back here. Before we come to the other side, just adjust yourself because sometimes you become a bit squiffy. Bring the right hand to the left knee. Left arm comes out into your T shape, rolling over into Jatara, Parivriti, revolved abdominal twist. On the other side, try and encourage the shoulder blades down towards the mat. So the further or the higher up the knees come, the more rotation comes about within the spine. There's less rotation if you bring the knees away from the abdomen, if that makes sense. Again, you can allow for the knees to splay. If you've let go of the knees, you can bring the right hand out to the side and gaze over to the left hand, Jatara Parivriti on this side, remembering to breathe. Remembering to breathe into that soft belly region. Remembering to breathe into the hara. So that navel region is really important for our energy. And if the gaze has come over to the left hand, draw the gaze up towards the ceiling and bring the knees up using the right hand to come back into the center. Coming into Apanasana, this time you can keep your head down onto the ground, tucking the knees in towards the body. Exhale, draw the knees in. Inhale, move the knees out. We're going to circle into the hips here. So allow for the knees to splay out to the side. Exhale, the knees in. Inhale, knees come out to the side. So we're creating these two circles with the knees. The big toe is touching together. So you've got this sense of symmetry, perhaps. And if there's asymmetry, just be aware of that. So inhaling away, exhaling, knees come together, and then scoop out the opposite direction. Inhaling, knees come away. Exhaling, knees come back in again 3 times. Inhaling, exhaling. Inhaling, knees away. And drawing the knees inwards, we're coming into a happy baby. So the feet are stretched up towards the ceiling. This is probably the best way to get into happy baby. See if you can roll the pelvis. You're aiming for your hands to come onto the back, the feet, the soles of the feet. Now, for some of us, that's not going to be so easy for whatever reason. Sometimes our hamstrings prevent that from happening. So if you can't get your hands to your feet, and the way to do that is to bring the knees out to the side of the rib cage. So you're widening that position. Can you allow for the knees to drop down into the rib cage region? And if that's tricky, you can bring the hands onto the back of the thighs. So the back of the thighs are always available. And be kind to yourself. Use that sense of ahimsa. Be kind. Try things out. See if you can get that width into the pelvis. So you've got an external rotation and it really helps. Think nappy changing. This is the position. Breathing into your happy baby, rolling from side to side, giving your spine a massage. Rolling from side to side. Now, for those of you who have got hold of your feet, and another position actually, if you can't get your feet, would be the back of the gastrocnemius. So you might need to have something to hold on to. We're going to do a little exploration here. So we're going to bend the left leg in and roll over and see if it's possible to get the right foot down onto the mat. Now, it doesn't have to come down to the mat, just see if that is going to occur for you. This is a little bit of mapping, because you probably naturally have not come into this position. We're now bending the right foot in towards the pelvis, bringing the left foot over. This is a Peter Blackaby sort of somatic movement. So you're bending the left leg in, drawing the right foot over. How does that feel? You might feel it actually it might be into the deeper hip flexors, the piriformis. How does it feel in your body? And indeed, maybe it doesn't make sense to you. If it feels unfamiliar, embrace that. Don't push too hard. Let's just try one more time. The more time you spend, not trying to overthink it, but trying to feel into the shape and what is available in your body, the better. And one more time on the opposite side. Bending the right leg in, and the left foot may or may not come over onto the floor. Now again, one side is going to feel different to the other. Which side is that for you? Lovely. Coming back into your happy baby. And if you want to stretch out a little bit here, that's fine, before bringing the knees in to roll. So we're going to come into our 3 rock and rolls, coming into our all fours position. So as we rock and roll, make sure that you feel comfortable with this movement. We're giving our spine a massage, and you can use the weight of the legs to bring you up. And we're going to cross over the shins to come into an all fours position by placing our hands in front of the shins. And you can either flick or gently bring yourself back into your all fours position. So all fours is a lovely place to be. Seems so simple, but it's always such a brilliant place to come into. The knees are directly under the hips. Feet flat, first of all. See if your feet are happy to flatten, and this will be useful for you in Hero or Vajrasana. Bring the hands underneath the shoulders. Bend the elbows slightly, especially if you're hypermobile. And come into an alignment that feels like neutral to you. Now, if you feel that you're automatically collapsing, so it would look a bit like this, coming into lordosis around the lumbar, which is very common, mindfully draw the back of the spine up towards the ceiling, so the pelvis changes its position. So you want to be in neutral. Looking down in between the hands, make sure the neck is nice and long. And we're going to come into an almost wagging the tail movement. So think about drawing your ear to your hip. So firstly, your left ear to your left hip. The shortest distance, as the crow flies or thereabout, to bring your ear to your left hip. I don't want to give it away, but you might find you're coming into a lateral side bend movement, bringing the left ear to the left hip. Come back into your neutral and come to the other side, so your right ear comes to your right hip. So you're constricting one side of the rib cage, come back to neutral, and opening up in between the intercostal muscles of the rib cage, a little bit into the serratus anterior and the QL. So just coming from side to side. So you're imagining that you've got a dog's tail. So your tailbone has got a little tail on it, and you're wagging it very slowly, and the head is joining in. Keep that neck nice and long. Just notice if you're trying to look up in front of you, you want to look down in between the hands. Lovely. And then coming back to neutral, we're coming into a more familiar flexion extension movement. Allow the head to hang really heavy and come into your scared cat, drawing the tailbone down. Let's exhale as we stretch into the back of the body, constricting the front of the body. Inhale to come through neutral. Exhale to come into your extension, which is your cow. Now allow that movement to come through the upper region of the rib cage, not so much into the lower back. Exhale, come into your flow. If you're familiar with this, come in through the breath. Inhaling as you come into neutral, exhaling to allow for the diaphragm to move, to make lots of space for your spinal extension. And one more. As you come into your flexion, before you draw your hips back onto your feet to come into Vajrasana, bringing the hands onto the thighs and coming into hero's pose. Just dropping the mind down into the belly here. So we're coming into our hara or our dantian area, so middle dantian, as you follow sort of Chinese medicine, or hara if you follow Japanese. Coming into our belly brain. Can you soak the brain down into the body? Coming into Vajrasana. So we're going to do a little bit of visualization here. Ensure that the pelvis is comfortable and you're neutral. So you can do a little bit of a pelvic tilt here by tilting the back of the pelvis and tilting it forwards. So you know what it feels like when you flatten the lumbar, you know what it feels like when you extend. Come into a neutral place so you feel utterly comfortable. Bring your attention down to your mulla band, your pelvic floor. Okay, so if you're not familiar with your pelvic floor, it's the muscle that is held when you stop urine. There's no good way of talking about it. So see if you can contract the mulla band while you're in your Vajrasana and release. We're going to do that with the breath. Contract on the exhalation, release on the inhalation. Contract mulla band, exhalation, inhale on the release. Okay, super. So you've got an idea of where that area is, where the root chakra is. Bring the hands down to the knees. We're going to visualize the breath. As we inhale, it's going to come up through the root, up to the hara area or the manipura, the navel area. And as we inhale, it's coming back down to the root and you'll have a sense of relaxation. Exhale, draw that up to that area, the navel area. And inhale, draw the attention back to the root, the pelvic floor. And then next time, as you exhale, draw the attention up to the heart space. And draw that line of energy back down to the root. Exhale, coming back to the heart chakra or the area around the heart, the chest. And draw the energy back down to the root, to the mulla band. The next time we're going to draw that attention up to the crown, all the way up to the crown. Or you can draw it up to the pineal gland because that's the upper dantian. So the pineal gland is behind the eyes and is responsible for the production of melatonin. And then draw that attention back down to the root chakra. So you've got those 3 spots that you can work with. Exhaling up, inhaling, releasing down to the root. And once you've come up to pineal gland or the crown, draw that line back up to the heart. Inhaling, tension back down to the root. And then lastly, exhaling to the navel. Inhaling back down to the root. And just one more time, just doing that line up to the navel. And the line comes back down to the root chakra. And just hold your mulla band for a second. Hold that contraction in the pelvic floor. And release. Super. I want you to bring your attention back up to your neck, bring the hands to your thighs, look over to the left shoulder and look over to the right shoulder. Now, is there any difference here? Moving your head side to side, as was when you were lying down earlier on. Okay? So perhaps there is a difference. So we're going to come into the eye exercises which are related to the tension in the sternomastoid. So with the eye exercises, first of all, I want you to look down at the left corner of the eye socket. We're going to create like a rectangle. So left bottom corner, lift this line up to the left upper corner of the eye sockets. Both of them are working together. Draw a line with the eyes to the upper reaches of the eye sockets over to the right. So the top right here. And draw the line down to the right bottom side. So you've got a rectangle. Drawing the eyes to the lower reaches of the eye sockets over to the left. You'll do this 3 times. Drawing the eyes to the upper corner and then drawing them over. Now this is going to feel interesting. The eyes don't tend to move in such extremes, and then drawing them down and across the midline. So we're going up to the upper corner of the left. Remember to breathe. When we concentrate, we often hold our breath, breathing into the belly, coming over to the right corner and going down to the bottom right. Super. And then to the middle. Great. And then I want you to focus on your sense of peripheral vision, okay? So you have a sense of peripheral vision when you've got an expanded sense when you're looking at a landscape. See if you can drop into that. That's quite a subtle thing. But then you're going to draw your attention to the tip of your nose. So your eyes are coming to the tip of your nose. Now, when you draw your vision to the tip of your nose, sometimes you get that double vision and you'll get 2 noses. See if you can do that. Let's breathe with this and come back out into peripheral vision. So it's not like you're staring at the screen, but there's a more expansive vision. Scanning a scene in front of you, then draw the vision back in towards the tip of the nose. So you're almost cross-eyed. And then allow for that vision to come back out into your peripheral vision. Bringing the hands together, we're going to create some heat so we can palm the eyes after those exercises. Rub them together, make sure your hands get really hot, because your eye sockets and the muscles in the eyes have worked really hard in those exercises. So we're going to close the eyes and bring the palms to the eye sockets, as they deserve a well-deserved sense of tension. This is called palming. And you can massage in towards the nose here, massage to the outer reaches of the eyes. And just allow for the fingers to sort of expand. So the light comes in, bring those hands down. So just notice how that is within your body. Coming back to the breath, look over to the left shoulder and the right shoulder. So you may or may not feel the difference there. It depends on your body. Drop the left ear to the left shoulder and come into that sternomastoid. How does it feel? Now rock the chin over towards the front and bring the right ear to the right shoulder. Keep that shoulder down. Mine's wanting to creep up to the ear. No, shoulder down. Allow for the head to open out to this side, rocking forwards. Now we're going to explore very tentatively as we come forwards, maybe opening around the throat, but not crunching too much. So coming into a circle. How does it feel to think about opening around the throat here as we come into a circle without crunching into the back of the neck? Coming through to the front, so you lengthen the neck and then come back in the opposite direction. Breathing, open around the throat and then roll forwards. Always finishing on this lovely long neck here. Lovely. We're going to come up onto our knees with a flowing breath. So when we were on our backs, we were inhaling the arms up and out over the head. This time, and you don't have to if the knees aren't happy, you can stay inhaling the arms up. So stay back on your heels, exhaling the arms down. Breathing through your nostrils, inhaling. So for those of us who want to transition into moving the buttocks off the ground, exhaling. We can do that after 3. Now, if your knees aren't very happy, you can stay in this position. Maybe bring the gaze up towards the hands as you touch the fingers together. exhale, and drop the head forward so the gaze comes down as you come down with the hands. Now we're inhaling and lifting up through the legs here, bringing the buttocks off the mat. Inhale, exhale, dropping down onto the heels. Inhale, coming into the breath here. Hands touch together. Exhale, dropping down. Feel it in the quads. Inhale. Gaze up towards the ceiling. Exhale, this time we're going to come into rotation as we come over to the left side and drop down into an easy twist. So the left hand comes behind the buttocks, the right hand comes onto the left leg. Inhaling, lifting up through the spine, exhaling and rotating, feeling that rotational movement within the spine. Inhaling, allowing the breath to come into soft belly. Exhaling, allowing for everything to draw inwards. Inhaling, lifting up through the legs. Gazing up towards the hands. Exhaling, bringing the buttocks down and the gaze comes over. 3 breaths here. Inhaling. So the right hand's behind the buttocks, left hand's on the right knee. Exhale. Inhale, height through the spine here. Opening up through the chest. Exhale, gazing down at the mat. Inhale. Coming up through the legs here, reaching up towards the sky. Exhale, coming into a forward fold or a little child's pose here, and the hands come behind towards the feet. You may be able to drop the head down here onto the mat. So you've come into your child's pose. Lovely. Now we're going to tuck the toes under, remove the hands so they're in front of you, so they're resting in a kind of regal fashion. So I might feel like this, quite regal here. Tuck the toes under. Explore your feet, the soles of your feet, the plantar fascia. You feel the stretch there. And as we come up into your downward dog, really feel like there's no weight coming into the arms. So you might want to spiral the fingers out 30 degrees or so to the outer reaches of the mat. That just creates more space in the shoulders. Drop the head so the head's nice and heavy. And unraveling yourselves. You can come up into your downward dog, bending the knees, allowing for the spine to lengthen and straighten, and create some space. And if you want to inhale, lift up onto the toes, really stretch through the toes here. Exhale, maybe the heels draw towards the mat. For those of you who have really tight hamstrings, work with bending those knees as much as possible to get the benefits of the lengthening of the spine. Inhaling, lifting up onto the toes. Exhaling, drawing the heels down. And how does it feel to gaze under the left armpit? Coming into a slight rotation here, and then gaze under the right, gazing under the left. Let the hips rock from side to side, gazing under the right. We're going to pad the hands forwards to come into plank. So we're making some space in between the toes and the hands. Now, if for whatever reason the wrists and the arms and the elbows don't want to be in plank, if you've injured yourself, bring the knees down. Otherwise, stay in your plank and explore chaturanga to come down to your front. So if chaturanga is too much, it's a bit like a push-up with the elbows coming in. Bring the knees down and do knees, chest, chin. So you're making your way down to the floor. Now, if anyone's feeling very strong, you can come back up again and do your chaturanga again, if you're feeling strong. So we're coming into crocodile. Bring the hands in front of you and resting the face down, cheek down, and then swap over to the other side. Of course, how is that? We're going to come into Bhujangasana, Cobra. So lifting up through the front of the breastbone here. Bring the hands underneath the shoulders. Gaze, most importantly, down at your mat. Create that space in the neck. Inhale, lifting up through the back. So your back muscles are really working here. Bhujangasana, Cobra. And be reining yourself in here as you breathe to gaze with your drishti down at the hand area. And release. Bring the face down to the mat. Wiggle your hips. to release any lumbar tension and come back into your cobra. Inhaling, coming into your cobra, gazing down. Now you can bring your Sphinx arms in, where your elbows are directly underneath your shoulders. Breathing here. Lovely. And then that sense of Ahimsa and Satya, only do this if you really feel the energy is there and it'll be okay for you. Otherwise, I want you to work your way back into downward dog on through your knees. But if you want to, you can bring your hands underneath the shoulders, come through plank. So you're doing reverse chaturanga. The hands are underneath the shoulders here. You're on the tip of the toes and you come up through plank to downward dog. That's only if your energy levels want to do that. Bringing the hindquarters up towards the ceiling. Breathing here. Before padding the hands to the front of the mat to your hands, coming into a forward fold, Uttanasana. Head hangs heavy. Really allow the upper body here to rest down, utilizing gravity. Being kind to your hamstrings, bending the knees slightly. So you're in your Uttanasana. And we're going to inhale, allowing for the head to come up last, coming through Ragdoll, up to Tadasana. And I'll just move the screen in case you can't see me, as I become headless. Coming up into your Tadasana, I just want you to touch base with that sense of Ahimsa, of non-harm, of Satya, of truth, and Asteya, of non-stealing. So drawing that attention into the body, that sense of internalization. As you're in Tadasana, your knees are soft. Your pelvis is in neutral. So your pelvic bowl is relaxed. There's no strain, no need for strain. If you're straining, just notice that for yourself. Be kind. Resting the shoulders down and away from the ears. And perhaps quite naturally allowing for the hands to rotate forwards. And exhale, draw the hands back so the palms are facing behind. Inhaling and exhaling. Super. Inhaling. We're going to draw our attention to the left leg. Lift up the right and spiral in through the hip. Just testing your balance here for now. And you can carry on inhaling with the arms, exhaling with the hands if you want that extra complication, as it were. And we're going to find a position without stealing anything, without getting hold of anything. I want you to quite naturally place the foot in your tree, Vrksasana. And don't worry if you're feeling off balance. Just come back to a space that feels right, where you can feel centered. And use that sense of Ahimsa, which is kindness, non-harm, kindness to yourself. Noticing any adjustments that take place within the body. Now, when you feel okay within yourself here with the sense of balance, we can move an inhalation into the arms position. Fix that gaze on something really lovely and still. So maybe it'll be a plant, maybe it could be the corner of a window, maybe it could be a shed, depending on where you are. Fix your attention on something that's immovable. And if you're balanced with this arm movement, exhaling the hands down, the next step for you would be to look up at the hands when the hands come above the head. So the gaze, in an almost peripheral sense, comes up towards the hands and then drops down with the arms here. And the next time we inhale the arms up, you can hold the arms up above the head. Now the arms and the hands might not want to come together. You might want to have the hands nice and wide, whatever works for relaxed shoulders. And then bring the hands back down to the hips and remove that leg by drawing the knee into the side and bringing that back down. So how do you feel now? Just notice for any sensations or feelings arise after that practice. Dropping the weight into the right leg here. We're going to inhale and exhale the hands while we remove that knee or create a circle with the knee and scooping round. So this is like brain training. If the hands on the inhalation and the exhalation and the knee is too much, just focus on the knee as we spiral into the hip, making some movements here, finding the outer reaches, and then with a sense of Satya, without stealing a position, Asteya, just drop the foot wherever it needs to be. So for some of us, it can be in the shins, for some of us, it could be placed down. And I love placing the foot down because you spread into the base of the toe joint. Be wherever you need to be. Find your drishti, your focal point, your fixed gaze. And then we're going to come into the arms, inhaling the arms up overhead. Exhale the arms down. Really feel it in the shoulder girdle as you lift the arms up. Can you allow the shoulder blades to almost touch together? Exhale. And an option for you if you feel really steady. You feel that sukrum and stira, steadiness knees. You can look up at the hands as they join together and bring the hands down. Let's try that one more time. Inhaling. And it can be a forceful inhalation in through the nostrils if you need to clear anything. Exhale. And bring the knee in towards the center and drop the foot down back into your Tadasana. Well done, folks. We're going to transition down onto the ground now. So I recommend bending the knees and coming through in a supported chair pose to come down onto the floor. So we're going to come into kneeling. And hopefully you can see me from this position. So we're going to come into a pranayama called Chandra Vedana, which is moon piercing breath. Now, we're quite familiar with alternate nostril breathing. Now, this is a more calming, cooling breath that is connected to the heart and the tha in Hatha. So heart is connected to sun, tha is moon. So they're connected to Ida and Pingala. We've got Ida, which is the left nostril. So I want you to close your right nostril with your thumb, very gently, no need to press too deep. Inhaling through your left nostril, exhaling through your left nostril. As simple as that, we're inhaling through the left, exhaling through the left. So this nostril is connected with the moon energy. It's more reflective, it's cooling, it's calming. If you wanted to energize in the morning, you would do it with the opposite side. It's called Surya Vedana. But because this is an evening practice and we are looking at the sense of Ahimsa, Satya, and there's a new moon tomorrow, and the energy is plummeting because of the new moon. And I know my energy, my cycle is also plummeting. So this is suitable to breathe in this way through the left nostril. For those of you who are familiar with alternate nostril breathing, the temptation to swap for me is really quite strong. Shut the eyes if that feels more helpful for the sense of interoception. Breathing, let's do 10 rounds here before we drop down into our supine position. Moon piercing breath. When you're finished with your rounds, make yourselves come down to your backs very gently, coming into your constructive rest pose, allowing for the legs and the knees to bend. And drop down into a position to set up for bridge pose, Setu Bandhasana. Now, it may be the case, and if this is the case and you just want to move into a Shavasana, finding relaxation, you can. Otherwise, bring the arms down by the sides, and we're going to tilt that pelvis, drawing the knees away from the body, and come up into Setu Bandhasana, bridge pose. automatically you'll notice the glutes contract, lifting the pelvis up towards the ceiling, gazing down through between the knees here, and then roll down through the vertebra one by one. Okay, so let's do that one more time. Rocking up through the pelvis. Now, if you want to bend the hands, some people like to do this and pop them under the buttocks. You can come into your Setu Bandhasana with some support. That is an option for you. Now, we're in an inversion here. Be kind to yourselves. If there's anything taking place within the knee, reduce the height of the pelvis and come down. So there's lots of different ways we can support ourselves within this position. But for tonight, we'll just work with that briefly before we come into Shavasana. Now, if you want to come into another inversion, you can. It's your own practice. Otherwise, let's relax one leg out, straightening the knee and the other. If you have a bolster at home and you want to pop it under your knees, you can do that to create more comfort and ease. If you have padding, you can pop that underneath the head to create a lengthening of the neck and the chin, tucking in a slight Jaladhara Bandha. If you want to use the hands, you can bring the hands to the back of the neck, stroking up so you're going past the occipital up towards the crown. The chin is tucking in, you're lengthening and relaxing the head back. And if you've got your legs positioned so they're straightened, allow for the feet to come out to the sides, the arms released out to the sides. And when we come into our Shavasana, really just touching into a sense of texture. So we're fully feeling with the body here. Now, if you're still feeling top heavy and there's this top down process taking place, which is very common, especially if you don't practice these mind body type movement practices, just notice that without any judgment. Don't force yourself to stop thinking. Sometimes we are very familiar with thinking 3 different lines of thought at the same time. And perhaps you find that you're just very much anchored within the body. And I'm going to offer you, as I sit up to explain, the practice of breathing up through the feet, all the way up the legs. I'm going to breathe your long breath up towards the crown, bathing yourself in this breath, and exhale all the way down the body, down through the legs, down through the feet. So you're inhaling all the way up the legs, the torso, up to the crown, maybe beyond the crown, especially if you experience this breath like sweeping. And you exhale, sweeping through the body, sweeping away any knots, sweeping out any tension or any debris as it releases out through the soles of the feet. Inhaling, back up again. Carry on with that breath, sweeping through the body. And I'm just going to talk through a little about the Yamas from Deshkachal, so the book The Heart of Yoga. So the Yoga Sutra describes what happens when the behaviors outlined in the Yamas become part of a person's daily life. For example, the more Ahimsa, kindness and consideration we develop, the more pleasant and friendly feelings our very presence engenders in others. And if we remain true to the idea of Satya, everything we say will be truthful. There is a wonderful story on the theme of Satya in the Ramayana. The monkey Hanuman, Prince Rama's servant, sets out to look for Sita, his master's wife. He travels to Sri Lanka where she is being held prisoner. Toward the end of his time there, he is caught by Sita's captors and his tail is set on fire. When Sita sees what pain he is suffering, she calls out, "Let the fire cool." Hanuman's pain is immediately alleviated and he shouts, "What happened? Why doesn't the fire burn me anymore?" Because Sita always spoke the truth, her words had great power and could extinguish the flames. For those who are always truthful, Satya, there is no difference between speech and action. What they say is true. The Yoga Sutra always states that a person who is firmly anchored in Asteya, which is non-stealing, will receive all the jewels of this world. Such a person may not in fact be interested in material wealth, but he or she will have access to the most valuable things in life. So not just on the mat, but off the mat, what practices can you imbue to follow these ethics of non-harming, Ahimsa? For some, that might be moving towards veganism. For some, it may be dropping negative self-talk. And for Satya, can we speak the truth no matter what situation we're in? And with Asteya, how can we prevent this sense of non-stealing? And in a very sort of obvious sense, that would be stealing someone else's goods, material possessions. But I think more importantly, it's a sense of not wanting to take something for ourselves. So perhaps that's cultivating the opposite rather than focusing on the negative. It's a sense of sharing. So we're coming to the end of our relaxation. Beginning to wiggle the fingers and the toes. And I'm going to invite you to roll over onto your right side. At the end of the following sound that you can perceive through your screen. So at the end of the sound, roll over onto your side in a fetal position, making sure you're comfortable on the side of the face. You can create a cushion with the arm. If you release the arm up as you roll over, that can cushion the face. And no rush at all. Again, at the end of the following vibration or sound, nada, just rock yourself up into an easy cross-legged or kneeling position with the eyes closed. And if it's more comfortable for you to have the eyes open, just gently gaze down to the end of your mat. With that sense of peripheral vision, so that expanded view rather than focused concentration that comes through the eyes. And we're going to bring the hands together to finish the practice in the heart space, bringing the palms together, pressing through the fingers, the thumb comes into the sternum, bowing in acknowledgement of one another in the space in between. Namaste. So I'm going to stop the recording, so you have to excuse the really loud voice.